Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COASTER-net Update. We've got news out of Sandusky, Ohio. News I guarantee you've already heard, but you've not heard our opinion on it yet.
No, we're going to weigh in on it big time tonight, Andy.
So, as you may have heard, most likely already, Steel Vengeance no longer has or allows cell phones in its queue line. Now, Danny, what's interesting, this policy went into effect on July 21st. Saturday.
Happy birthday to me.
Well, happy birthday to you. Exactly. You know who was there, Danny Miller, to experience it firsthand day one?
Lots of people, because I saw him complaining about it on
this guy. I was there, front line of the battle. I was there in the queue lines, battling it out. No. It's actually quite calm in the queue lines. So just a few things to dispel any hearsay or rumors. Like I said, I was there. I saw this in place. There are signs all over the place saying that you cannot have cell phones in the queue line, very big signs. There was a new sign put up later on that weekend that talked about it being a misdemeanor for not following, posted rules and the rules of ride ops. Those signs are always there underneath.
They've always been there. They're just in bigger print because people aren't reading it.
Yeah, so they're always there at the very end of the safety guide in front of every ride at Cedar Point. It says the Ohio law, that's a misdemeanor. So they're just making it bigger. The thing that people were talking about, they didn't know if it was happening for sure. Yes, indeed, there is a ride op sitting in the queue line monitoring whether or not people have cell phones. And as you know, a lot of the queue line goes underneath the structure of Steel Vengeance. And yes, they do patrol that as well. Every now and then they do walk up and down those queue lines to make sure people don't have cell phones there either. So Danny, I don't even know where to start with this. We've seen people post stories on COASTER-net already. Daniel Westfall weighed in. Basically talking about, hey, this is going to be a way for you to get to know people, get to know other people in the queue line.
I don't know if I want to get to know everybody that I'm standing in line.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Some folks are very nice to talk to, but other folks, I'd rather not talk.
I'll tell you this, Danny. My first time in line for Steel Vengeance for 52 minutes, the lady in front of us decided to talk to us for 40 of those 52 minutes. And I don't know if I wanted to have that conversation for 40 of those 52 minutes. But
no, maybe 4.
But, so there are write-ops in line. We have also had, our good friend Jeff from COASTER-net weigh in with the fun versus safety that he wrote a pretty good blog. If you want to go check that out on our website as well, there's a blog there where he's talking about, at what point does that line cross over too much?
Yeah.
Danny, let me start here. Okay, let me start here. One, I understand why we need cell phones, not on Steel Vengeance. I understand this. It's a very aggressive ride. The stuff is flying out. I've read reports, unconfirmed reports, that the number of lost item claims for the front office has gone up by as much as 3 times, that they could have
inundating the front office
as much as 3 to 4 bins in the front office of, lost items just from Steel Vengeance. This is a big headache for the park. I understand that. I also understand that there's the issue of the lady down at King's Dominion that got hit in the head with a phone. There's dangers all over in the world. I get all this. But my problem with this is, and I'm going to tell a little story here, Danny. I know you love stories.
Love them.
This is a little story. So I'm getting off of Steel Vengeance on Monday night. It's Monday night. Beautiful ride at night. I have to say, I'm even more impressed with Steel Vengeance at night. I don't feel like it's any faster. I sat in the front row at night. I don't feel it's any faster, but it's an amazing experience. It's even better at night. So I'm getting off the ride, and there's 2, we mentioned on a previous show that there's a bunch of softball players there, some middle school age, young teenagers, and 2 girls were getting off the ride. And the one girl goes into her hoodie pocket, pulls out one cell phone, goes in again, no other cell phone, and looks to the girl and says, "It's not here." So even with all of these precautions, people are still entering the lines with cell phones in probably even less safe places than they normally would be, because if they left it in their pocket, it might have still fallen out. You know, I don't know if their pockets were zippered, but they're not worried about that in the line. They're trying to hide it in new and exciting places so that it doesn't, you know, get caught by the ride ops. And yet here we are. It still gets lost. It still gets put out, and one of the 2 cell phones is gone. So let me open this up where I fully
for those of you that are not math majors, that means one of the 2 cell phones was lost on the line during the ride.
Yeah, not during the queue line, during the ride.
Yes.
So I fully believe that next year there are going to be metal detectors at Steel Vengeance, that they're going to go all in like Universal does at all of their roller coasters. You know, I think they're going to be metal detectors, which I think brings us to the next big problem of the lockers. That seems to be where the outrage has stemmed from, that people are outraged that they have to pay $2 to buy the lockers, or $10 for the movable locker throughout the whole day.
Which quite honestly isn't too bad of a deal, but we'll get there.
It isn't. But my problem here is this. Throughout the whole park, okay? Well, let's start before. Before, I felt like lockers were lockers of convenience. That if you wanted to bring in a bag with your newspaper, your swim trunks, an extra pair of shoes, your Nintendo Game Boy, whatever else you put in that bag, you had a locker for convenience that you could lock it up and make sure that it was safe.
And I'm a drawstring bag guy. I bring a drawstring bag in with a spare T-shirt for, you know, the hot sweaty days when the sun goes down. It gets cooler. I like to change out of my sweaty T-shirt into a fresh one, you know, for night rides and whatnot. And I put my wallet in there. I put my cell phone in there. I put my my portable charging brick, since I'm taking a lot of pictures and video. I kill my phone battery and a cable, and I bring a drawstring bag. And I understand that by doing that, there are certain rides at Cedar Point and other parks that I need to get a locker for those items, and I have no problem doing that. Continue.
Now, on the other hand, I'm not like that. When I come into the park, I've invested money to make sure that I do not have to do that. So one, I buy zippered pockets on all my shorts. I go into the park, there's zippers. It's very unlikely. It would have to take a very rare circumstance for something to fly out of my pocket. Sometimes I felt that things were going to fly out, but never have once have I ever had something fly out.
And I wear zipper. I have pants with zipper pockets as well for if we're waiting in a long line, I can put my bag in the locker and still keep my cell phone with me.
So with me,
it's safe.
In a theme park, what I have on me is I have my cell phone, I have my car keys, I have my season pass, my driver's license, and a credit card in case I want to buy something. And I've also gone as far as to buy a charging wallet that I can put these items inside a wallet that will also charge my phone at the same time. So I have invested not a whole lot of money, but money into making sure that I am safe while riding roller coasters. But now I'm being told that all of these efforts are for naught, that I cannot bring cell phones into the queue line. Loose articles is much more difficult to understand. So there's 2 signs. There's one that says there's no loose articles. This is the sign with the misdemeanor on it. It says that there's no loose articles on Steel Vengeance. Then on a separate sign, the sign that went up earlier on July 21st, one of the rules says that wallets and keys are acceptable in your pockets as long as they are secured by zipper or button.
And that's the part that I don't understand about this rule, because a wallet, I get that it's maybe not as heavy up front, but at 70 miles per hour, a wallet and a cell phone are going to hurt just as much. And you can make the argument that the keys are the most dangerous of those 3 items, because in general, the cell phone is flat on 2 sides, and the keys, you know, those could probably essentially could potentially do more harm than the cell phone or wallet. And
to be honest with you, on Dragon Challenge, it was said that change knocked out a person's eye. So, you know, that in a wallet, you might have...
It's in for a penny and for a pound with this at this point, now that they've gone to this point.
And that's the problem, is that they have conflicting signs. So back to my initial point of all throughout the park, they have signs all over the place that, hey, use your cell phone for this. You know, play the battle for Cedar Point. Great game. Use your cell phone to go onto the Cedar Point app. Download the Cedar Point app where you get free coupons for things. Hey, great, I save money. They are actively encouraging me to bring in my cell phone to the park. And now they're telling me that when I get to Steel Vengeance, I can no longer have it. And that's where I have the issue, is that the park is encouraging, even in the queue line, for you to use your cell phone because they feel that's a valuable part of your day. But now they also want to charge you $2 or $10 to put it into a locker. That's where my problem is. And if you say $2 isn't a lot and you say $10 isn't a lot, well, Danny, we just did the show about the Cedar Fair financials, and we talked about how the tickets are $55, and if you invest in, Fast Lane for $150, and I'm buying your T-shirts for $25, which is an upcharge. You know what? The $2 in and of itself isn't a lot, but when I start adding up all the other prices throughout the day that I have to pay, $2 isn't a lot. And if it's not a lot for me, guess who else it's not a lot for, Danny? It's not a lot for Cedar Point, so make the damn lockers free.
Yeah. Now, I don't disagree with anything you're saying here, and I understand why people have such an issue with the lockers. I get it. Listen, I get it. At the same time, sitting here in 2018, I have accepted that more often than not, when I go to a theme park, there is at least a couple of rides where I'm going to have to buy a locker where they don't have the bins, and they don't have that sort of thing. I understand that there's certain rides that that's the way they do it. And I'm going to give you a few options here. But first, I want to kind of get on my soapbox, just like you sort of did a little bit here. I made a big deal out of when Six Flags started doing the lockers, particularly at Great Adventure in 2011, 2012, when I first started going to that park somewhat regularly, when I first started getting my Six Flags passes and when my Dorney employee ID got me into Great Adventure. That's when they first started really doing the lockers at every ride. And I complained about it then. And people back then, originally, a lot of folks were like, well, it's $1 for an hour, $2 for an hour, or whatever. And then they started coming out with the $6, $8, $10 a day where you can move it throughout the park, which a lot of parks have that option, which I think is a great option.
And Cedar Point and Cedar Fair just got this year. This is the first year for that.
Yes. Six Flags has had it for a few years now. But at a park like Cedar Point, I think that's actually a really good option because, Steel Vengeance, $2 for 2 hours, Millennium Force, Magnum, Top Thrill Dragster. Does Gatekeeper still make you get the lockers? Or did that change?
If you have anything bigger than your cell phone.
Okay. So, Battle Raven, I believe, as well.
Yeah, they have lockers.
So, I mean, when you add it up and you add up the fact that I'm going to ride many of those rides multiple times throughout the day, $10 for a movable locker that's good for an unlimited number of times throughout the day for one locker at a time, that is a much better deal than the $2 for 2 hours every time. So if you do have a bigger item, the $10 is the better deal. Fine. And then you're essentially getting the Steel Vengeance one for free at that point. Fine. I get it. I disliked the upcharge lockers 5 years ago. And I've now accepted that as part of the experience at many parks. And people are using this Steel Vengeance cell phone issue to springboard into the locker argument. The time to fight that fight was 5 years ago. So if you're going to start fighting the locker argument by itself, everything you said about Steel Vengeance in particular is correct, and I agree with. But to use this as the basis of the locker fight in general, this is not the time nor the place to do it. Because the time to fight that fight was long ago.
But I think the problem is now you are affecting, whereas before, people who brought in bags, what percentage of the people walking through the gate has a bag? And when you see the no bag line, there's a lot of people walking in without bags. So now the problem is
fair.
You are affecting almost who's walking through the gate without a cell phone. Even my 62-year-old father and my 62-year-old mother have cell phones walking through the gates. So I would almost venture to guess 99% of the people walking through the gate has a cell phone. And if they get on Steel Vengeance, that means 99% of the people are going to be affected by it. Whereas before, maybe only half the people were. So, and I think you could take reasonable steps to ensure that you didn't have to pay, the $10 upcharge or the $5 upcharge or however much you're paying throughout the day. You could take reasonable steps to ensure that you didn't have to pay that to keep your overall cost of trip down. And then you could spend it elsewhere. I don't know if they just save it in their pocket and they walk home with it. But you know me, I'm one to spend money in the park. And now if I'm paying $10 for a locker every day, now I'm going to have to think twice if I'm going to buy that $25 t-shirt. I bought 3 $25 t-shirts this weekend because I just left my cell phone in the room, and now I'm not participating in any of the apps or games that you're asking me to participate in.
No, I think that's a fair point there. So, but again, that's Steel Vengeance in particular, right? And people are using this to jump into the general locker debate of, well, if they're going to have lockers at rides, they should be free. People weren't bitching and moaning about that when it was at Gatekeeper and Fury and Valraven by itself. And I get that that's because certain people who just had the wallet and the cell phone had a place to put them and it wasn't a big deal. And now it's affecting them. I get that. I understand that. And I understand why. But this isn't about the locker debate in general, because that's been going on for years. This is about the specific policy that exists at Steel Vengeance, which is affecting everybody, as you said, which is absolutely correct.
And if they go into metal detectors next year, it's absolutely going to affect everyone, because if you can have no loose items, that includes your season pass that you have to get in the gate. That includes your keys to your car that I don't know how you got to the park because you can't ride your bicycle on the causeway. Mm-hmm. So at some point, if they go to metal detectors, it will affect 100% of the people walking into the line, unless they have a person stand outside that's going to hold all their items for them.
Absolutely. So now I'm going to give you a few options and tell me if you like any of them. I was having a discussion with my Hershey guys who are mild theme park fans as well. They travel a little bit, been to parks like Carowinds, King's Dominion. One of them went on like a 12-park East Coast trip at one point this year. So reasonably well-versed in the theme park side of things. And we were having a good discussion over the weekend about possible ways to fix this or to, I guess, combat this. So there's other systems that exist, such as the Hershey Park or Universal method, where it is a free locker for the length of the wait time plus a little bit more, so you can get on, get off, whatever. That's one way. The question is, do you do that at Steel Vengeance only because you're now forcing everyone to do it, and the other lockers like Millennium Force, Valraven, Gatekeeper, etc. are still the $2 for 2 hours? Maybe that's one option.
I would have no issue with making Steel Vengeance a special case, because you're basically going to force and here's the thing, Danny. If safety is really your concern here, if it's really about safety, why wouldn't you want everyone to feel 100% secure in putting your stuff in your lockers? That the minute you start charging, it becomes about money now, and now you're going to have people trying to cheat the system in order not to have to pay the money. For instance, these two young girls, these two teenagers who, I didn't see any parents anywhere around them. They're there for the softball tournament. Their parents probably let them loose in the park. They don't have any cash on them. How are they going to buy a locker? And now they're cheating the system. And if it's about safety, that phone that flew out of her pocket, that could have hit somebody because she didn't have the money. If you make it free, then there's really no reason. Then the only reason is that people can't stand in a line by themselves for 2 hours, which I don't think is a valid excuse. I can't be away from my phone for 2 hours because of medical emergencies or because of nonsense. The kids at school tell me that bullshit every day, and I say to them, there's plenty of phones everywhere. If there's really an emergency, all you have to do is walk over the fence, go find a ride op, and there's phones all over the place. We survive without phones as short as long ago as 10 years ago. People didn't have cell phones all over the place. I think we can survive today. So that argument I find to be completely ridiculous. If you have an issue with that, that's great. But there's phones all over the place.
Yeah. So there's a special rare case. Two teenagers, two 15-year-old kids get dropped off, and they have get dropped off. They have their season pass because they have their meal plan on there, and they have their drink plan on there, and they don't have any cash on them. They don't have a credit card on them. Do you tell those kids, sorry, you can't ride Steel Vengeance because you can't buy this $2 locker?
That's what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds like. Okay, so okay, that's
once again,
very rare, but still,
like we said, once again. That's setting up policies that you are not grooming the next generation of kids to like theme parks. That this is the problem now is you're telling all these kids who are attached to their cell phones, sometimes you got to go along with the river, and going upstream is not the way to go. Sometimes you got to go along with it and figure out what's the best way that we can make everyone happy so they continue to buy those $55 tickets and those $180 passes.
Yeah. So, okay. So then so we know a little bit about some of the current options that exist elsewhere in the industry. We came up with a couple different ideas that I don't know exist anywhere. And here's a thought. The first idea was, what if you get, and it could be at any of the locker locations. You could even have a central one at the beginning of the day. You go up, you get similar to what you get at the FECs. You get a little card, okay? And you pay $15 for this card, okay? You scan it at each locker location, and if you return and you get a locker with that card, and every time you go over your allotted locker time, it deducts $2 or $3. Or whatever. And if you go through your $15, you have to go pay more time or whatever. And if you return that card at the end of the day to a kiosk or whatever, and you've returned to your locker and retrieved your items on time throughout the day, you get your $15 back at the end of the day. So it's sort of like the hotel room thing where they do a security hold in case there's damages. And if you are a good abiding citizen and are a good patron who uses the lockers properly and does not abuse them like some people do, because I've seen the free lockers at Hershey Park where people go put their stuff in the locker and then they go around the park and they come back 6 hours later over their time and say to the locker attendant, well, I can't pay the overage fee because my wallet's in the locker. They open it up, the attendant walks away, and you don't have to pay for your locker then. I see that abused, that the free lockers abused like that all the time. So do you combat that by making them pay up front, and then if you don't leave your stuff in the locker over your return time, I guess, you get your money refunded at the end of the day? What do you think of that first, and then I'll give you the other option?
I don't necessarily dislike that. I think it presents a lot of...
There's other issues with it.
There's a lot of administration with that, and I think that's
infrastructure that needs to be put in place with that too.
And then once again, you have to have the $15 up front. Going back to these teenage kids, do they have the $15 with them up front? I don't know. Are you paying in cash? Do you then have to refund them the money? I don't know. I think there's a lot of administration, and I feel like if you made the lockers ride specific, that only people riding the ride could access those lockers, like for instance, Steel Vengeance, you already have a natural cutoff point with the railroad. If you, I know it's impossible to police everything. It really is. That people are going to find ways to cheat the system. But if you only have them be able to enter those lockers when they enter, and the line's already kind of set up like this. In the morning, they have steel gates going from the ride sign backwards to like towards the haunt, and then back by the lockers where you have to enter the queue and then pass the lockers. Kind of like if you were to think about, a lot of parks do this, like Mammoth has at Holiday World has the little cubby holes as you enter and exit, something like that. But with a locker system, I'm trying to think of is if you set up the lockers that way where you could access them from both the entrance and the exit, there's really no reason to leave your stuff in there all day because you can only get to it from the line.
Well, and what I've been reading is that because they're doing this now, they're now running out of lockers, and the issue is people are now having to go elsewhere, and Maverick doesn't have lockers. So the closest set of lockers is down back by Dragster.
Yeah, and the problem, well, the problem with that is too, is it's not an issue of people abusing the system either. I don't think
it's just that's how many people are in the line.
This is how many people are in the line. That when you have a 3-hour line on something, and of course this is not going to be. I would imagine this is not always going to be an issue, because at some point the line's going to die down. Even when we were there, the line was only an hour and a half, and I would assume that you would have enough space for people to put an hour and a half worth of locker space. I don't know.
Even if you only have 200 lockers, is there 500 people?
I don't know. To me, this is becoming an area of convenience that just like toilets are. You have to have enough toilets for the park. Put in enough lockers, even if they're free. It's the cost of doing business that people enter the park for, I just think that you can set up a way and set up a queue system, and maybe they have to think about this for future rides. You can set up a queue system where only the ride can access those lockers. And you can access them from both the exit and the entrance.
Yeah. Okay. So, second option here. And this one, personally, I think I like a little bit better, just because I know it's something that I would get. What if, just like you have your season meal plan, your season drink plan, what if you had a $30 season locker plan on your season pass, where when you go up to the kiosk, boop, you swipe your season pass and you get a locker just like you normally would. I like the $10 movable one all day, because I don't have to reach into my wallet and put a $2 bills into the thing or swipe a credit card every single time. I like the $10, the one-time charge, the season pass thing, and this could be like the meal plan and the drink plan. It's good across the chain because you've got lockers at other rides, throughout the park, throughout different parks. You got rides like Fury that have the lockers. There's plenty of other parks that have the lockers. Mystic Timbers has them. All the new rides have these lockers now, right? Yeah. I think Banshee has lockers.
That's a good way to pay for the ride, right?
Well, I guess so. But what if it was, $30 on your season pass, and when you get up to the locker kiosk, instead of putting money in, you just swipe your season pass? Because at that point, if you're a Cedar Point goer, a $30 season locker pass would essentially pay for 3 visits. And if you go to any other park, you're going to get your money back. You're going to get more money there too. You pay for it up front. You don't have to pay money anymore when you're at the park, just like the drink plan and the meal plan. And it's quicker when you're actually at the kiosk as opposed to putting money in. What do you think about having a $25, $30 season locker thing on your season pass?
If I'm forced into a system like this where I'm going to be forced to put loose items into a locker, and if I'm also assuming that the lockers are never going to be free, then that would be the most preferable option after that. But not for a second do I not see it as another upcharge by Cedar Fair, sure, on top of all the other upcharges that the problem is the other upcharges I feel like I'm getting value out of. When I get a dining plan, I feel like I'm getting value out of that. When I get a drink plan, I feel like I'm getting value out of that. When I get
you're getting something for those, whereas they have the right to keep your items.
The right to have a cell phone in the park and my keys to my car, and not to have to lose them on a ride. It's a lot tougher sell. If I have to, I guess I'll do it. I think a lot of people are going to rail against that as well, because once again, it's $30 more on top of the $180 that they pay for the pass.
I agree.
They pay for the tickets. And if you buy a daily ticket, that doesn't help you either. And I look out for everyone, Danny Miller. I'm a man of the people. As I go into the parks and I talk to people in line and I talk to fans of the show.
Yeah, that doesn't help out. That doesn't help out the day guests. You're right about that. But
and I'm all for the day guests, because you know what? Those are the people. The day guests are the ones who are actually paying to build all my lovely roller coasters that I love so much. The
day guest gets the $10 movable, and you move on.
But that's another tax on them. And for everyone that says, well, you know what? That's just too much money to go to Cedar Point now. You're going to lose people. You're going to lose people.
No, I agree 100%. I think this is all, contributing as well.
I think the only solution that makes most people happy is to make the lockers free. I think that's the only solution. And even if you said only Steel Vengeance, I think that would make a lot of people happy. It makes the park unhappy because you're probably going to have to buy more lockers. But really, realistically, how much of an investment is that?
I think they need more lockers anyway. If you're going to be making everyone in the line doing it, I think you need to have far more than they could. Because we hear they're on media day.
You can even look at it. You shouldn't. To me, lockers should be about safety. If that's really the reason why we're doing this, if it's about safety, you should look at the other lockers as paying for the seat. It should be a break-even proposition. Even if it's a lost money proposition, you should still do it. Holiday World gives out free sunscreen because they believe that's a safety issue, that they think people should have sunscreen in line or in their parks, and they don't want people to get skin cancer. They give out free drinks because it's a hydration issue. You don't have to have people walking up to counters asking for free cups of water and da-da-da-da-da.
And you know what? Every time that I have to buy a drink at a theme park, I go, I wouldn't have to pay for this drink if I was at Holiday World.
Exactly. and Holiday World takes a loss on that. It's built into the price of their tickets. I just don't see how Cedar Point, I know their revenues are down, but they're making money hand over fist. They've raised the prices on so many items over the last 6 years that I'm paying more every single visit. They've raised hotel prices, T-shirt prices, food prices, every single price that you could imagine they've raised on me. Maybe it's time that I get the $2 back from them. And, hey, we're going to throw you a bone and give you a free damn lock.
Yeah.
That's my point.
I don't know. There's a lot of sides to this argument here, and I think we've pretty well outlined.
And I'll say this too. The stores are empty. Whereas before you could walk into a Cedar Point store and there is a line to buy products, the stores are empty now. They've upcharged so much money that people aren't spending that money. And maybe it's time to look at those policies.
Well, you've taken their souvenir money away by charging them for the lockers now.
Right, charging them for everything. I'm surprised that we're going to have to pay for the toilets pretty soon.
well
25 cents.
Well, yeah, this is Roller Coaster Tycoon style now. Pay 10 cents for the bathrooms now.
I get that there's multiple perspectives to this. I fully agree with the safety issue, Steel Vengeance. I fully agree with the lost items issue, that this is presenting a problem that needs to be fixed. But I think the solution they've come up with is not a solution that's actually it's addressing the problem on the surface. It's the legality. It's telling people at Coasting for Kids that they can only ride 2 times in a row, even though we rode Gemini 100 times in a day and never had an issue. It's this litigious argument that somehow by them doing this, it's preventing them from getting lawsuits. I hope that's not why they're doing it. I hope that they're generally concerned about safety. And if they're generally concerned about safety, they're going to want every single cell phone out of that line. And the only way to do that is to make it as convenient and as cheap as possible to make people put them in lockers.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, you can't really say it any other way.
Mr. Safety, Mr. the people. That's what
there you go. Well, and, as former Cedar Fair employee, safety is one of the 5 cornerstones that they teach the guests. So as our cleanliness, courtesy, service, and integrity.
And I'm not even going to bring up the issue, Danny, that you can afford to put a write-up in the queue line to look for cell phones, but you can't do it for line jumping. I'm not even going to bring that issue up tonight, Danny. Not even going to do
it. That's another issue entirely. No, there's a lot of different sides to this story and a lot of different sides to this argument. I think we've covered most, if not all of them, very well.
And mark my words, this gets worse next year because I guarantee you that there will be metal detectors on Steel Vengeance next year. I guarantee it.
I think it's really heading that way. And if the issues, if they continue to have issues, it's just going to go from there. So I certainly don't think this is the last we've heard of this. There's certainly going to be more to this story before it's going to get worse before it gets better. I feel like.
I think so. I think so. So hopefully they have a plan. Because you need a PR plan. This one is
failing to plan is planning to fail, Andy.
There you go. So as always, thank you for joining us here on COASTER-net Update. This was a little bit longer update, but we thought that you would enjoy our spirited debate as to what to do here. Of course, I'm Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, right, Warriors.
See you guys. Put those phones away.